comics, like Mr. Mxyzptlk is known to, like, he's like an imp. You know, he typically portrays himself as like an old man. He has, crazy white hair. He has a little bowler cap on, chat. That's kind of the version that we also see in Superman the Animated Series, voiced by the late, great Gilbert Godfrey, Jafar and all that. Superman!
Whoa, Rocky, where you going? Super schlubs that way!
Hello, and thank you for checking out the video. I just want to let you know that I not only create content on my YouTube channel, Class on the Glass, but I'm also on Twitch, where I review movies, cartoons, and TV shows live, while also playing single-player games and multiplayer games. I also have a Patreon, where subscribers have access to hundreds of video and audio commentaries for films and cartoons, as well as podcasts and videocasts. In the meantime, thank you again for watching. Enjoy the video.
Let's go ahead and get to the next part of my show, and that's my review for My Adventures with Superman, episodes 7 and 8. I've been doing consistent reviews for this show for the last several weeks because, well, one, I'm absolutely in love with it. It has been so refreshing to see an interpretation of Superman that is not sad and dark and depressing and murderous, and pretty much, the antithesis of the character which we've gotten in live action for the last, 10 or so years. Certainly, theatrically. Superman and Lois, I think, from what I've seen of it, has done an absolute great job of adapting the character in a TV format. But My Adventures of Superman, it's a return to form, I think, for Superman in animation. I like that they are so much focusing, not only on, hey, we're kind of, this is our new version of Clark Kent and like, his various adventures and him finding himself as Superman, but also just focusing on the relationships of his friends and family, and like really defining that and having that be one of the most important aspects of the show. It's been one of its defining features. You're seeing it everywhere now on social media. It's proliferating. Everyone's just, doing shipping posts of Clark and Lois and drawing the two of them and being so sexy, Chad. It's been amazing to see all that. As we know, the internet can be very talented. It can be very, very horny, and we're seeing that.
Take it off.
What?
In My Adventures with Superman. But for these particular two episodes, for those that don't know, in episode 7, Clark is trying to plan a normal date without any Superman problems, but it never really gets interrupted when Mr. Mxyzptlk arrives to create mischief and danger. And then episode 8, the mysterious general uses Task Force X to confront Superman as the city seemingly begins to turn on the Man of Steel. I want to go ahead and focus on episode 7 first, which is Kiss Kiss Fall in Portal. I have to tell you right now, both this episode and the one after it, Zero Day Part 1, these have been my absolute favorite episodes of the series so far. The way in which they're balancing all the drama, all the wholesomeness, but with all the mystery and action, I think is on full display in both of these episodes. Like, even how this episode opens up, it takes place like pretty much immediately after the events of episode 6, in which, Clark basically finally, everyone knows now in terms of like his closest, friends, both Jimmy and Lois, they know he is now Superman, and he takes them to the place that, he is still confused about, unsure about, and that's back home in Smallville, where we see the device, the ship, whatever it is, the obelisks, the Kryptonian obelisks. He doesn't even know he's Kryptonian yet. And he basically shows them that. And Jimmy's just like, oh my God, this is the most amazing thing ever. He starts playing with the obelisk and starts handing on them and jumping from obelisk to obelisk. But, we get this like really cute moment between Clark and Lois. And they pretty much, because Clark, he starts apologizing. Listen, I'm sorry that I lied, but I was scared for all these things. And because I feel like you would be afraid of me. And she's like, you know what? Let's clean board, and she puts out her hand. She is like, how you doing, big guy? My name is Lois Lane. And he takes her hand, shakes it. And then he twirls her in the air, Chad, and he embraces her. And they just, it's being very cute. And their rapport, they're back and forth, just adorable. As Jimmy is just, just jumping from obelisk to obelisk. Thankfully, these obelisks aren't trying to kill Jimmy like they tried to kill Clark's parents back in episode 1 and 2. But it's adorable, and it kind of ends before we get to the intro logo with Clark asking Lois Lane out on a date. And I thought, like, that is so great and so wholesome and so cute. And again, it's one of the things that I've loved so much about this series, that yes, you're going to get all your Superman action in there. We do have like a really interesting thorough line main story that we're following, and they keep delving into it as much as they want and they can from episode to episode. But it takes the time to have these moments where these character relationships feel real and they don't feel superficial at all. It's not like, well, you know, Clark and Lois have to fall in love, so just there you go, they're in love. But it's like, no, it's taking its time to show the relationship, and I think it's been like really cute and adorable. And then after that, you know, we get to the very amusing part of the episode where Clark is just overthinking the date. I get the sense that Clark hasn't been on many dates before. I feel like maybe because of his identity crisis and not knowing his powers, that, you know, he's always been kind of like awkward around women. And so for like Lois, he's like over planning like everything. It's like, we're going to do this at like 6:15. And then after enjoying this, we're going to go here at 7 and everything. And I just love how kind of hectic and manic he is in the beginning of this episode. And like Jimmy's just kind of trying to, he's like, man, just take it easy. just relax. And he's like, I can't relax, Jimmy. It needs to be perfect because Lois is perfect. And he's like, okay, listen, I'm gonna go over to Lois's apartment where everything is normal. And she's doing the exact same thing that Clark's doing. Like, she's like, this has to be perfect. I need to get him like a really cool gift because he's really confused with himself and he's having an existential crisis, but I hope I can be there for him and kind of like fill in the emotional hole that's been inside of him for years, because I want him to fill my hole. It's like all that chat, because as we all know, kissing leads to stupping. That's what happens, right? And Jimmy's like, oh my God. He's like, you two are perfect for each other because you're just as manic and crazy as anxious as anyone else I know. And so I really like the opening for this. But, you know, after that, you're like really adorable opening. You know, it leads into the introduction of, I think, a very underrated supervillain, which is Mr. Mxyzptlk, chat, which, for people that don't know, is this being that can go into different dimensions. He fancies himself a chaos god. He's this magical being with a seemingly unlimited power. And, you know, I think there's been a little controversy over this version of Mr. Mxyzptlk, just because of the design. You know, I mean, in the comics, like, Mr. Mxyzptlk is known to, like, he's like an imp. You know, he typically portrays himself as like an old man. He has, you know, crazy white hair. He has a little bowler cap on, chat. You know, that's kind of the version that we also see in Superman the Animated Series, you know, voiced by the late, great Gilbert Godfrey, Jafar, and all that. Superman!
Whoa, Rocky, where you going? Super schlubs that way!
Like, absolutely loved his portrayal of the character. He's very different from other villains like Lex Luthor and Brainiac and General Zod. You know, he's more magic based. He's, you know, a little more whimsical and out there. He's mischievous, and that's why I think, you know, makes him stand out among a lot of the other villains. Here, they kind of change up his design a lot. He's very reminiscent to me of characters from Dragon Ball Z. He reminds me of the group called the Kais. Like, you have, like, these mystical beings that, like, train people in Dragon Ball Z. And, like, because he has, like, almost this, like, elf, like, design. He has, like, this blue skin. His look actually reminds me of, like, some of the, like, the elder Kais, like the Grand Kai in Dragon Ball Z during the Buu arc. And so I didn't mind that so much since, you know, well, this show is clearly influenced by anime, and they just wanted to change it up. And he's still very impish, you know, in nature. And also the voice acting. I want to give a huge shout out to David Arrigo Jr., I think that's how you say his name, who provides the voice of Mr. Mxyzptlk. He is fantastic because he's going back and forth to, it's like you're getting kind of whiplash, but in a good way with his voice acting. Because sometimes he can sound so desperate. He's like, you know, he's seeking Superman's help. He's like, please help me. You know, Lois, she's in danger. She's been captured. And then he'll just change on the snap of the fingers, chat, and he'll be the little mischievous son of a bee that he's always been. And it's like, wow, I loved what they did with his design. And I love the voice acting here. I mean, yeah, it's not Gilbert Godfrey.
I heard you the first time. Okay, let her rip.
You know, who can do Gilbert Godfrey, chat? I mean, you know, it's certainly an iconic voice and performance, but I really like what they did here. And you know, Arrigo Jr., he displays both his mischievous and dangerous nature throughout this entire episode. And again, you know, Superman, he's not experienced with, he's already fought like all these other villains, these kind of tech-based villains. Now he's facing an interdimensional creature that you know is incredibly manipulative and capitalizes on Superman's earnestness and naive, because Superman wants to help people, because that's how Mr. Mxyzptlk introduced himself. He's like, can I need your help. You know, Lois needs your help. He's like, oh, Lois is in trouble. Oh, let me drop everything. Along with that, you know, we also have another element in this episode where it does get into the multiverse, since, you know, Mr. Mxyzptlk is part of the multiverse, traveling to different dimensions, of course. And people will be like, oh, multiverse again. Like, we're all sick of it. It's like, stop. I think the way, you know, this series or this particular episode is treating the multiverse is actually quite smart, because the way in which they're using it is not just for, you know, like, hey, remember that thing or this thing or that? Like, it has a story element, but at the same time, pays respect to the past in very classy ways. And we see that, you know, in this episode, there's the League of Lois Lanes, chat, where it's like all the best Lois Lanes from across the multiverse have formed this organization to deal with multi-dimensional threats. I mean, we get older, you know, savvy Lois. We get like punk rock, cyborg Lois. You know, we get Lois Lane, you know, a gender bent Lois Lane. We get different versions of Jimmy Olsen, Jenny Olsen in this episode. And I like that. And they're hunting Mr. Mxyzptlk for a variety of reasons. Also, I really appreciate, and this kind of, you know, again, as you guys know, I'm a huge fan of the DCAU, the DC animated universe. You know, Batman animated series, Superman animated series, Justice League, Batman Beyond, etc. And I really appreciate that this episode pays so much respect to the DCAU, because in this episode we do see the DCAU Superman. We do see the DCAU Lois Lane, and even some stuff with the original Mr. Mxyzptlk, which they kind of imply this actually might be the Mr. Mxyzptlk from Superman the Animated Series, based on a certain thing that they find of his. I was like, oh, wow. I thought that was so cool and so classy. It's like, hey, we're our own thing, no doubt about it, but we definitely acknowledge the past and what impact it's had on us and our show. And I thought that was great. I thought that was very, very cool that they did that. It implies like, hey, that universe still exists in the multitude of the vastness of the multiverse. So I thought that was really, really cool. And the action scenes in this episode are superb. It's like, you know, Mr. Mxyzptlk reveals his true nature, you know, very early on. Not even at the halfway point. He's like, I lied. He gets very honest. Like 5 minutes in, he's like, I lied to you, dumb. It's what I do. It's what I've done to all, you know, versions of you, Clark. And they showcase his powers, and it's like, wow, Mr. Mxyzptlk can be actually really scary and terrifying, because, I mean, he can, you know, they show like a depowered version of himself initially in the episode, but once he gets like a certain thing, you know, then he really shows off his powers, and he very much embraces being like a chaos god. And it's like, oh, you want to kill everyone, don't you? And so I like that. Again, they show his mischievous nature, his comedic nature, but also just how dangerous and psychotic he can possibly get. And they also imply that, oh, he's going to be around for a little while. And so I was like, oh, that's good. I thought that was really cool. You know, we also get, I think, a nice cliffhanger too, with Lois obtaining a piece of technology that basically shows what the multiverse is and all the different types of Supermans there are in the vast multiverse, and how that's kind of playing a role in her own perception of her Clark Kent and what the possibilities with him could be, good, and most certainly bad. And, you know, getting into the next episode, episode 8, 0 Day Part 1, and another two-parter. The first two-parter, obviously, was episode 1 and 2. This one's a little darker than episodes 1 and 2. And the thing about this episode is that it perfectly balances tone. You get plenty of wholesome, heartwarming moments in this one episode, and some really dark and tragic sequences for the characters as well. I like how this starts, and this is like in general in this show, it's like this is very much a depowered Superman. This is Superman that's discovering his abilities as he goes on his adventures with Lois and Jimmy, and fights all these villains and everything, and explores different worlds and things. And his powers are still evolving, and here he gets his super hearing for the first time. And how they play with that, I thought was great, because again, it's the balance, chat. It's the balance where they are humorous with it. They provide sequences that are quite funny and very warm in nature. And then there's also kind of the tragic side of it. It's like when he first gets his hearing, he's like, oh, I'm hearing all these people. I got to go out and save them. So, he does everything he can, helps a father and his child get out of a burning building, go saves a cat. Oh, he's always saving cats in the show. And I was like, that's great. He saves so many cats. I think that's been really cool. And he's like hearing all this and everything. And at first, he has a smile on his face. He's like, wow, I can help even more people. But he constantly hears people calling out for help, like, help me. And sometimes it's like, oh God, he's going to kill me. And Superman's like, oh my God. And he rushes, over there to save that person. But then that's the dark side of it, because it's like, yes, as great as that ability is, and now he could save even more people, and he's having those moments, like he's hearing it constantly, and he can't turn it off. And it's making him exhausted. It's running him ragged. And I mean, can you imagine you can hear everyone at once? And you hear people suffering. It's like it starts out comedic. It's like, Jimmy, I hear all of them. And let me tell you, Jimmy, they have problems. A lot of problems. But then there's the dark side of it, because he hears everything that they say. And it's kind of destroying him. And it's like, wow. And, as we know, and like in the comics and everything else, it's he's had to kind of hone in on that. He's had to learn how to turn that off. And here, this is a Clark. This is a Superman that doesn't know how to turn it off yet. And so he's not in a really good place, like in this episode, despite kind of starting out very comedic. Like, oh, isn't it goofy that he keeps hearing everybody? But it's just like, oh, no. It's also like really messed up that he's hearing everyone crying out for help. Everyone who is scared, or who is about to be murdered, who suffered an accident, and he can't save. And the thing is, chat, is as amazing as Superman is, as many powers there are at his disposal, he can't save everyone. That's kind of like the tragedy. Despite seemingly having the powers of a god, he really truly doesn't. Even though he's he has an ability where he can hear everybody, like you could see me like any god, but he's like, he can't help them, can't help all of them. And I like that they played into that in this episode. Another part of this episode I really like, again, it's not just always focused on Superman, and Clark and what he's experiencing, but they give a lot to Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen in throughout the series, and especially here, where in this one, it's pretty much a case of, it's not always great to meet your heroes, with Lois Lane being introduced to the character of Vicki Vale. And, I really like this. We've gotten some really different takes on Vicki Vale in the last few years in like different mediums, Obviously, I think when people think of Vicki Vale instantly, they think of, Kim Basinger's character from the Batman 89, which I didn't really, doesn't really get to do much in that movie. She's pretty much as a damsel in distress. And even the comics, they haven't really done a lot of interesting things with Vicki Vale, at least the ones that I've read. But I really actually appreciate what they did with Vicki Vale in the Telltale Batman series. I thought that was, a far departure of the character, but it worked really well and gave her a really interesting arc and loved her, let's just say, her relationship with Batman, that one. That was really interesting to me, and Bruce. Here, she is very much the veteran reporter. She's like kind of the most, successful reporter in the history of Gotham, which Gotham is mentioned. Gotham and Gazette is mentioned. They do mention the Falcone crime family. They do another reference, another drop. No Batman, no Bruce Wayne, but it's like, okay, so clearly Gotham exists in this world. Gotham Gazette is real. I wouldn't be surprised if eventually we do hear a drop. But it was kind of cool. It's like, hey, you're taking it slow of the introduction to, the other aspects of this DC universe, of this DC show. So Gotham does exist in this universe. But here, she is a cutthroat reporter. I think she's pretty much what Lois initially wanted to be at the start of the series. Like, I'm going to expose Superman, I'm going to tell all of his secrets, but then she learns who he actually is, and she knows like what he's there is he's trying to be like super earnest with, you know, with what he's doing, and he wants to help people. And Vicki Vale's like, I don't care about that shit. I don't give a shit. You know, she pretty much, Vicki Vale is the Laura Ingraham of the DC universe in this show, Chad. She's like, I don't care about the facts. I'm here to tell a story that's gonna get people to read it, that's gonna get people to click on it, all right? I didn't win all these awards by being honest. And so it's like, oh my God, she's kind of a scumbag. And so Lois and Jimmy are basically assigned her by Perry, who also hates Vicki Vale, but they need her because she's so successful at what she does, you know, and they want her for the Daily Planet. And, you know, they basically, you know, they set up all the interviews for her, and like all these interviews are people who love Superman. And we get some callbacks to some earlier character. I love that little kid Flip. I don't know, that little kid is like, this is Kids from Kids News Nation. I'm gonna be a reporter too. She's the one with the little unicorn helmet. Adorable. Like they bring her back. They bring out all these other characters that Superman has saved throughout the 8 episodes at this point of the show, and they have nothing but positive things to say about Superman. And she's like, yeah, that's great. That's adorable. But she's like, I have one other interview I want to do, and it brings back the character of Alex, chat. Alex, which they keep saying his name. I'm just like, that's Lex Luthor. Come on, it's Lex Luthor, but you could tell he is so resentful over what happened in regards to Ivo. Dr. Ivo in the parasite suit, and how he basically lost his job. And so that resentment is there. And he is like, we are not, this being who suddenly comes down and feels like he can do anything he wants without the proper authorities, or he could just intervene whenever he feels like it. He's like, that's dangerous. A man who can fly, that can do all these incredible feats. Someone like that does not deserve that power. It's just like, there we go. They're pretty much setting up to be, you know, Lex Luthor. But again, like I like it that they're like, we're not saying he's Lex yet. We're not going to put him, you know, already kind of put him out there as the main villain. It's like, we're going to take our time. We're kind of doing different things with other Superman villains right now. We have other threats that are on the horizon. But I was like, okay, this guy's pretty much Lex. But I like that. I thought that was really cool. Bringing him back and being the exact source that like Vicki Vale wants to use for her Superman story. And then Lois kind of having that kind of coming to God moment. And Jimmy as well. It's like, oh, you're a bad person and a bad reporter. You know, she's like, I don't want to be like you. And I did like that. And Vicki Vale's like, honey, you got to be like me. Okay. It's the only way you're going to get ahead in this world. And then, outside of that, like we have some really great, cute, adorable, wholesome moments in this episode. Like there's this moment where Superman, who now has all these abilities, is able to hear everyone, right? And he hears this like little girl who she's lost her mom, and she's just wandering the streets. And Superman, and it's so wholesome where Superman flies down. He's like, hey, can I help you? He's like, what's your name? He's like, my name is Libby. And he's like, my name's Superman. And it's like, are you trying to find your mom? She's like, oh, where my mom is. And he's like, don't worry, I'm going to find her. And like that whole moment and sequence when he just helps this little girl find her mom. Like he takes a moment out of his day. I just want to help this little girl. And he does so. And then on the flip side of it, chat, you know, we get to, because Superman's being, you know, run ragged, it's making him more anxious. It's making him, I wouldn't say volatile, but it's just making him so stressed out. And he's trying to find the general. You know, because, you know, there's a certain character that is trying to find other members of Task Force X who have been captured and have been subjugated and forced to be a part of this organization. And what inevitably happens is he causes an accident while trying to save this person, and he damages this truck and basically causes an automobile accident. And people are like freaked out by him. I was like, how could you do that? You almost hurt those people. And he's like, I didn't mean to. And so you could see like the city turning on him. You know, they're like, whoa, because they don't understand. And it's kind of tragic, and it shows that he feels so guilty, even though it's not his fault what happened. But I like that in this series, that when he even does something that results in an accident, you know, like a car crash, he feels immensely guilty about it, and he feels like really bad, and he doesn't know what to do, and he's kind of like beside himself with grief. And it's just like, oh my God, he actually cares. He cares. He didn't like, you know, like a certain Superman who, you know, went through skyscrapers and they all fell on innocent people and went, whatever, you know, like this one, he caused a car wreck and he feels guilty about that, right? And just his reactions to, like, you know, because after the, like, Vicki Vale publishes her story and just seeing that, and he just feels bad. and he doesn't know what to do. He's confused and he's really hurt. You know, and his conversation with like Lois and Jimmy, as much as they're trying to help him, they kind of say the wrong thing to him, and it just makes him even sadder. And he's like, I gotta deal with this now. I love that. You know, with his Superman. And then that leads to a incredible fight sequence, much like the fight sequence at the end of episode 7 of Mr. Mxyzptlk. Here we get a fight sequence where all of his past villains from the last, 7 episodes come back to confront him, and they're all super powered. They got everything that they have, and it's a fantastic sequence. And he's weakened because of everything that's going on in his life right now, and he's not in a good place physically and emotionally. And he has to face off against some of his greatest foes at this point. And some of them like were really resentful towards him, especially Ivo, who's now the parasite of this show. Ivo's just a creep. He is just so weird and disturbing, and he wants to not only like murder Superman, but he wants to like just make him feel pain, immense pain constantly. And they do some like really gross things with him too. Like his design, I like how he's kind of changed over the course of the series. And it's like he's in his tech suit, but like underneath it, he's just such a disgusting human being. I really, really like that. And again, it has a fantastic cliffhanger, and it provides, more questions like, okay, why is Task Force S, why is Cadmus, why are they trying to capture Superman? How is this connected to something that happened like 22 years ago, with Superman's arrival on Earth? Because the General, Amanda Waller, and everyone else are seemingly so concerned about that thing, and they are trying to prevent something. So it's like, oh, this is interesting. It's like, what could it possibly be? It's like, I mean, when I'm thinking, it's like when Clark arrived, did he cause, like when he crash landed, did he cause like a destruction? Did the government obtain like information on Krypton? They know about like maybe General Zod or Brainiac, and it's like there's so many questions that we have right now about it, and it's cool that they're they've been playing the long game with the mystery of giving our little tidbits, little details as it goes along. And it's been great. Well, again, providing us these great slice-of-life Superman moments, these great slice-of-life moments with Jimmy and Lois Lane, and again, featuring some really well-animated action and some great fight choreography. And both these 2 episodes have that in spades, Chad. It's great, and it's it's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite animated shows of the year. Hell, it's one of my favorite shows of the year. And I think it's a great, refreshing take on Superman, who I don't feel like has been interpreted very well over the last decade in some mediums. But right here, I highly recommend it. I think for people that want to return to that kind-hearted, morally righteous Superman who is just trying to do the right thing, while also like really building up his supporting cast, will really appreciate this show, and most certainly these last 2 episodes. We have 2 more episodes after this, and I can't wait to review them. I will review them once they are both released. But yeah, those are my overall thoughts on My Adventures of Superman episodes 7, 8. What about you guys? What did you think about My Adventures of Superman episode 7, 8, and just of the series in general? Do you want to see it continue on? Do you want to get a 6th season? Would you like to see other DC characters, other DC heroes and villains eventually featured in the show, and possibly even getting their own shows, like Batman or The Flash or Wonder Woman? I certainly do. Let me know.
I hope everyone enjoyed the video, and I want to take the time to tell you about my Patreon, Class in the Glass, which offers hundreds of film commentaries and video reactions to numerous movies, TV shows, and cartoons. If you're a fan of shows like Batman the Animated Series and Avatar The Last Airbender, or films like Aliens and Raiders of the Lost Ark, my Patreon is the platform for you. Currently, I'm doing a subathon to reach 75 subs on the platform. If we hit 75 subs, we'll be able to start voting on the next edited YouTube reaction, which will include actual clips and scenes from the movies and shows I comment over. Choose from such films as Fire and Ice, Masters of the Universe, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie, Mortal Kombat Annihilation, or Spawn. Subscribing at any tier level is appreciated, and feel free to give feedback at any time. Thank you again for watching the video, and see you next time.